Okay, let's get started. We have a lot to cover today. First, I want to welcome everyone who's here, those of you who are attending live, and a hello to everyone who'll be tuning in afterwards. Thanks for making time over your lunch break today to join us. We have a lot of great information to cover and talk about, and so excited you're all here. Today's session, just a reminder, today's session is being recorded. And then we will be providing the replay to everyone who registered in advance. And a quick introduction, I'm Katie Poland-LaClare. I founded the LaClare Group back in 1997. And like many of you, I have been in this industry for a long time. I started LaClare Group in 1997, as I said, and after spending many years prior in hotels and with the state association, over the years, we partnered with some wonderful clients and suppliers, like many of you that are here today and like our panelists. So why this conversation? Well, we all know that our industry was hit hard by the pandemic. And most of us have done virtual meetings to a greater or lesser degree to bridge that gap when we couldn't meet in person. And of course it is, it's a valuable way to connect, share information, and educate our attendees. And as we venture out to do in-person meetings and events now, as things open up across the country, there are many things that have changed. Some of you may have already experienced this. And for those of you who haven't, we'll be hearing lots of information today from our panelists on that topic. So basically, our goal is to give you some valuable bits of information that will help you confidently move forward with planning, producing, and most importantly, attending upcoming conferences, events, or trade shows. So I'd like to take a moment to introduce you to the three guest panelists that we have today. The first one is Michelle Lauer. Michelle is the Director of Global Sales at GLi, otherwise known as Associated Luxury Hotels International. Michelle has been in the hospitality industry for over 20 years, including Marriott, Hyatt, and over 5 years with GLi, specializing in meetings and incentives. In her free time, she enjoys listening to podcasts and taking care of her 2 rescue pups and spending time with her 5 nephews. Next up, I'd like to introduce Mark Stewart. Mark is Vice President of Corporate Sales at Ground Logistics International. He brings 30 years of experience in the California ground transportation industry, although he will tell you that besides California, he does groups and events all across the country. Mark has worn nearly every hat in those last 30 years, from chauffeur to operations to owner and sales development. He's been involved in various trade associations, including the Los Angeles and San Diego Business Travel, San Diego Tourism Authority, Meeting Professionals International in Orange County, and the Greater California Livery Association. Mark has held board of director positions at MPI and the Greater California Livery Association. And last but not least, we have Benson Callahan, who is project manager at Maple Lane Media. Benson has been in the event industry since 2007, specializing in audio and video production. I can attest, well, actually, I work with all 3 of these people, so all wonderful people. Much of Benson's day-to-day work now involves pre-production planning for meetings large and small, hybrid, and in person. He joined Maple Lane Media in 2010 as a technician and has worked into his current role as a project manager for client events. Benson approaches all client events as a partner, and he feels that technology that's deployed for the event should connect everyone, even if they are attending virtually. Benson is a native of Minnesota and loves spending time outdoors with his family. So a quick layout of just how we're going to run it today. We have our questions, prepared questions for our panelists. They'll each be taking turns answering from their own perspective. And then we are encouraging all of you as attendees to use the chat to comment, to share insights, and of course to talk with each other. There'll also be time for live Q&A. And so if you're comfortable, feel free to raise your hand either visually or the little raise hand button on the screen here. And then we'll call on you and ask you to unmute yourself. So let's dive in. I'm going to stop sharing and we're going to start asking some questions here. All right, so the first question, after September 11th, air travel had permanent changes, as we all know. So my question to each of you is, what do you think has permanently changed for the meetings industry as we move out of this pandemic? And Michelle, this time we can start with you, please.
Sure. Hi, everyone. From what I've seen as far as the luxury segment, a lot of things that will be changing permanently are more of the physical aspects of the guest room, as far as having a QR code for all of your access for in-room dining, menus, things like that. The rooms have basically been cleaned out. So I know personally, I don't miss any of the paper in the room. And also, you know, I just throw pillows and things like that will probably not ever come back. As far as the actual meeting portion, you know, right now we're doing plated over buffet and things like that. I think moving forward, there will just be a little more caution around buffets and action stations when they do come back. I don't think those are gone forever by any means. I think they will quickly return actually. But I do think that there will be an extra caution with all of that. And, you know, your group may lean more toward plated as opposed to buffet at this point. And I know that there's a big question about mini bars and room service and daily housekeeping. As far as the luxury segment goes, you know, I think all of those things will come back eventually. We're going to be speaking to the staffing issues in just a few minutes, but as staffing comes back, I think that you'll see most of those return. You know, mini bars, I was saying earlier that mini bars didn't really make sense before the pandemic for a lot of hotels. So I think that'll be kind of a hotel by hotel basis on whether or not those come back. For limited service and even some full service, I don't know that daily room service or daily housekeeping service will come back necessarily either. I think that for the luxury segment, I had 4 trips in June and all of them were pretty much back to normal. So as far as major shifts in permanent changes, I don't really see anything on the luxury hotel side. And I think they will be fairly minor as we get into a year or two out for limited and full service hotels.
Okay, great. Mark, could you take this one next, please?
Yeah, I think with ground transportation, each state has some type of mandate put out by their regulatory agency, and a lot of them were following also CDC guidelines. And ground transportation is sort of lumped in with public transportation. So until things changes, you know, drivers still have to wear a mask. Technically, the passenger is supposed to be wearing a mask. We still have the cleaning protocols. And we're seeing some changes even on the industry-wide that there might be a universal program with some type of standards just moving, you know, forward, because we're realizing that, you know, there's always going to be a new next COVID strain. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. You know, do we get to actually remove the mask and, you know, reduce the cleaning? But, you know, so far everything is just staying the same and we don't see any changes, you know, even going into 2022.
Okay. Benson.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. Yeah, our industry, obviously, being that, you know, we're kind of a production company based in setting up stuff in a ballroom, having people be in person. We've seen, quite a bit of changes. I think coming out of the pandemic, one thing, that everybody knows on this call, I'm sure, is that hybrid's not going away. If you were doing hybrid meetings before, get ready. The accelerator's going to get stomped on here. Everybody's going to kind of be headed that direction. We're hearing a lot of our clients say that. One question that we're getting from a lot of people is really, okay, how do I give my virtual attendees and my in-person attendees, how do we give them kind of the same, the same experience? We're seeing a lot more people gravitating towards apps, use of Poll Everywhere, use of Slido, apps like even Pigeonhole for doing Q&A. It kind of gives everybody a universal platform to be on together, to do things like submit Q&A, to, do any gamification, things like that. So we're seeing a lot more people gravitate towards just needing to make both experiences for the in-person folks and the virtual people really make it, as similar as possible. And I don't think we're quite there yet. A lot of people that we've been talking to are still very hesitant to, pass a microphone around and things like that. We're taking extra precaution, wiping things down as people, request it. That's not a big deal. A lot of pieces of our industry have a lot of hands on them, from presenter to presenter, you're passing a clicker around, you're passing a microphone around. So we get that, and we understand that, there's still some sensitivity around that. And, anything that we can do to still engage, the attendees across a one platform and just kind of get everybody really in the same area is definitely something that we're kind of pushing towards. So lots of changes in that perspective. We always kind of still, there's some struggles with, trade shows and things like that, because so many people, they just want a face-to-face, and a lot of times you make new connections when you're just walking around on a trade show floor, and some of that's kind of gone. So we're still navigating through, how some of that stuff looks. If it's making, a Zoom meeting and just kind of leaving it open and letting people pop in and pop out, that's still kind of a thing. I don't see a lot of that going away. So we're still kind of, as we're kind of moving back to in-person, things are still kind of evolving. They're still changing. People are trying to sort out what's best for everybody, for exhibitors, for attendees, for virtual attendees. So there's still a lot, that is navigating through, and that's okay. I think each conference is a case-by-case basis, and definitely make sure you value the feedback you get from everybody, because that's really what shapes your next event.
Okay, great. Any questions so far from the audience on what they've said? I'll give it a second here, just because I know there's a delay. Okay, I'm not seeing anything, so I'm going to jump to the next question here. So what trends are you seeing in your respective business segments? Are some things staying the same? Is anything different in the US versus internationally, or even different in different parts of the country? Mark, you want to go first on this one?
Sure. So I was mentioning earlier to the panelists, we've seen our business start to ramp up probably the last 2 to 3 months, especially the last 2 months. The pandemic impacted our business over the last year. We were down to like 5% of our revenue. So business has slowly been coming back. It's been mainly on the leisure side, especially now with the summer months. More of the states opening up. Corporate travel slowly is returning. We're seeing what a lot of the surveys that have been out previously through Global Business Travel, MPI, U.S. Travel Association, talking still about the third quarter. We're constantly daily reaching out to our corporate clients, whether it's the travel department, admins, meeting planners. Pretty much they're all still saying third quarter, possibly late third quarter of, a little bit more stimulus coming into travel. And I think the biggest problem with corporate travel is still the whole liability issue. Between corporate compliance, HR and legal trying to determine this whole liability issue with their employees traveling. You know, we've got litigation, you know, where does that impact the corporation? So I think that's why we're still seeing the hesitancy of corporations, you know, opening up and traveling. I mean, we've been hearing, which is a good sign, that the execs are pretty much now sort of saying, hey, look, we need to have employees come back in the office. Everybody's been working remote. So that's a nice shift when they start coming in. And when you start seeing the CEO traveling, then pretty much sooner or later, we're hoping that we'll see some changes on that. On the meetings aspect, believe it or not, because we're in California, we had, you know, one of the most restrictive lockdowns. We actually had a couple meetings in April in Orange County. We've had Las Vegas, we've done Nashville, we've done Texas. So some of the other states that are a little bit more lenient than California has been, but most of those meetings were under 100 people attending, so nothing really large at this point. We do see budgeting, so the meeting planners or independents that we work with, we do have stuff on calendar, so they're booking like late into fourth quarter, and seeing in the first quarter of 2022 is already looking good. I'm going to chime in with Benson, what he said, and I'm sure everyone on this panel, because of the whole hybrid side, that isn't going to go away, because our corporate clients sort of got spoiled with the hybrid. Not to say there is obviously cost, but a huge savings when you're not doing air, hotel, ground, entertainment, you know, AV and everything else. So some of those corporate clients have told us, you know, we're going to do a combination. We're still going to do hybrid, and that's coming from upper management, but we still need to do face-to-face. I think in the end, it's all going to come down to is, where's the real ROI? Are these corporations getting that return on doing these hybrid? And as Benson has mentioned, and other AV companies, trying to put on a hybrid combination in person where there's that true value is, you know, I guess is the ongoing challenge. But obviously there's a lot of there's a lot of different technology that's, you know, coming into the market. So I don't think that's going to go away, but we're just seeing those are, you know, promising things for us in the ground transportation. But I know we're going to jump into probably one of the other questions here, but I'll just say, obviously all of us are being impacted by the labor, and labor is a huge issue. So it's sort of careful what we wish for of wanting the business to come back any quicker than it is, because we won't be able to, you know, provide that service to our corporate clients.
Okay. Benson, we'll have you go next on this one.
Yeah. I mean, certainly the trends we're seeing is hybrid. You know, I mean, that's. I don't think that's going away. You know, there's really so much over the last year has been all virtual, and that's fine, because I think there's still a need for that, especially when a lot of the corporations that we work with, they're international. They have customers all over the world, and they've really begun to recognize that just doing, you know, an event, whether it be an hour long, they were seeing registration pop up all over the place. So, you know, virtual definitely is something that I think, you know, can still be leaned into in certain aspects, especially if you're, you know, a corporation with international people. You know, if you have 1 hour's worth of content that you're going to put out, great, let's do it virtually. You know, if you need a website built, something that's very, you know, very easy for users to navigate, simple registration, no registration, whatever you kind of need, you know, the tools are all out there for that to be built and that to be, you know, really deployed to whoever your customer base is, you know, and if you need it to be you delivering content, you know, not really getting any, you know, chats or Q&A from the audience, great. You know, that stuff isn't going to go away, and it's still an effective way to communicate, you know, whatever your product is, whatever your message is, whatever, you know. I mean, we're kind of having some talks with some people as to, you know, with a hybrid event, especially a paid event, you know, what do we do? Do we give the hybrid people a discount because they're staying home, they get that luxury? And a comment that was, actually said to me by our account executive yesterday, one of his clients told him, you know what, if you're going to attend this in person or virtual, you're going to pay the same price. Because at the end of the day, the content that they're giving everybody is what they're giving you. You shouldn't get a discount, because you're sitting at home, and chose to attend virtually. That's fine. For this group, that's kind of where they're at. They're very education based, and they realize that what they're providing to people, it should cost the same whether you're in person or you're attending virtually. So I think there's a lot of discussion, that we're having with people just in regards to how do we recoup some of the costs of doing hybrid, because it does cost a little bit more. If you've never had to pay for a camera on your event and you're doing something hybrid, you're going to have a camera. You're going to probably have to have a camera operator as well. If you've never had to, web stream it or do it on Zoom, there's going to be internet costs, through the venue. So finding, sponsors for those types of things, that's key, and there's companies that I think are really willing to step up and say, yeah, we'll sponsor, we'll pay for that, all that kind of stuff. Because content may need to get out, virtually. And especially if it's hybrid, those are some things that I guess we're kind of trying to navigate with people, because it's something they haven't had to pay for before, but at the same time, they know registration may be down for in-person, but there's a group of people, a market segment that they serve that's going to attend virtually, and they're going to do well. So I think we're navigating a lot of that stuff. It depends on what kind of experience you want to give everyone too. So really, from an event production side, having conversations with us, and really what I tell people is we work kind of backwards forward. So you tell us what you kind of want it to look like, what you want your users to be able to do, what you want them, how you want them to engage and things like that. And then from there, we kind of fill in the pieces, on the way down the quote. So really, we certainly have examples that we give people of things that have worked well, things that haven't worked well, but every audience is different. So I would say that, hybrid, obviously it's here to stay. Again, not to say it again, but it's here to stay. And I think really figuring out what your audience needs, that's key to really making, this trend something that's going to be an effective tool for your meeting and your event, your conference, whatever it may be. So.
Okay. So moving to you, Michelle, what are you seeing for your segment, and what's staying the same and what's different?
Sure. So I would be very surprised if any of you have not heard from your hoteliers that things are picking up tremendously. We are seeing a ton of short-term business. We are really jam-packing everything into the from now until the end of 21 and 22. You're going to find just as much difficulty finding availability. So we're not completely up and running yet, but we're in a great spot as far as the hotel side goes. For example, I can tell you that we just closed out June, and we had a higher lead volume in June of 21 of this June than we did in 2019 in June. So if that shows anything, I mean, people are definitely back and wanting to meet. And I would say that if you want to find availability, first, obviously, reach out to us, but and Katie, but you're going to need to throw out a wider net. I know that we've in the past told you the opposite. Let's really focus on what your budget is and what hotels make most sense, so that we're not sourcing 15 hotels for one program. Those days are kind of out the window right now because so many hotels do not have availability. So I would suggest to cast your net pretty wide. If you have flexibility at all, obviously we'll go for your preferred dates. But if you think that there is any any availability or any chance that you would have flexibility in your dates, make sure that you're putting that out there as well at the very beginning, just so we can bid on your preferred dates or, turn down your preferred dates and let you know what we do have. Another trend that I'm seeing personally, and I think we've seen it across the company, is for incentive programs. Instead of seeing these big 500-600 person programs, we're seeing waves of 425 person incentive programs. That way we're, it's a little bit of the COVID restrictions and people just feeling a little more comfortable meeting with smaller groups. So I've seen a lot of that recently. Arizona, Florida, Texas, the hotel or the states that had really availability and were open to take business as of last year, they are really tough to find availability right now. Your opportunities will probably be in, Chicago, California hotels, some of the cities and states that weren't wide open quite a while ago. So that's something that we're seeing. And then as far as rates go, rates are right where they were in 2019, if not higher, to be quite honest, because unfortunately the demand, fortunately for the hotels, unfortunately for our planners, the demand is there. So we're trying to recoup from 2020. So the rates are as high as they were in 2019. And although we are seeing a lot of flexibility with concessions and things like that, our hotels are trying to drive rate. So I think you'll see that across the board. I think that's all for me right now, unless there are any questions.
Okay. I see one that's come through and I think it's probably makes the most sense to ask Benson. The question is, are you seeing different versions of what hybrid might look like? For example, just live streaming your general session versus offering a fully immersive virtual experience to coincide with the in-person experience? And what are some tips to keep the cost of a hybrid experience manageable?
Yeah, that's a great question. In regards to, what the hybrid experience looks like, it really can look so many different ways. We're getting some people that are changing their entire meeting agenda to just be a general session versus, general session with 4 breakouts in the afternoon or anything like that. They're kind of leaning into using one space and one space only. And I think that's, there's definitely some cost savings if you don't have, if you don't have 4 breakouts, that's 4 rooms, you don't have AV in, that you're able to maybe rededicate some dollars, from a breakout room back into a general session, you can kind of move that money back into doing, something hybrid. We do have a few customers that, we did some early on, we did some web streaming for out of our studio here in our office. We were using basically kind of our web streaming platform, getting people in using different tools like Teams or Zoom, getting them in and kind of unbuilding that platform and then, redeploying it basically out on a web stream. Some of those companies have kind of said, if we're already doing this in Zoom, we're already paying for Zoom as a corporation, we'll just continue to use Zoom. I mean, we're on Zoom today, it works. Not to say that our web streaming platform is, far and above Zoom. Yeah, we can certainly do some cool stuff on our streaming platform, but from the communication tools you choose to use, if you are comfortable with Teams, your audience is comfortable with Teams or Zoom or whatever you may be using, go ahead and continue to use that. I think don't get maybe bogged down so much in the platform. We certainly can, give you some offerings for different platforms if you feel that Zoom isn't going to be enough or it's just not going to make an impact. We can certainly help develop some tools to use. I think, like I said, kind of taking sessions and realizing, okay, do we still do a breakout? If so, what does that look like too? that's been sort of a difficult conversation to have with some people because they want, those virtual attendees to have the ability to go into a breakout. And a lot of times spending a lot of money on, extra cameras and a breakout that maybe didn't have audio before, now it's going to have audio because the virtual attendees need what's going on. Are all things that, kind of need to be reassessed and looked at, in regards to how your meeting is going to happen. There's a lot more considerations that you need to take into effect. I mean, I got a comment from somebody a couple weeks ago about, they participated in an event and they were very disappointed, that basically the breakout rooms was just a laptop sitting in the front of the room pointed at the audience. You couldn't really hear everybody. So being mindful of that technology and how it's deployed is definitely something that is worth a conversation with whoever your production partner is, asking them, hey, how are you going to do this? Because the dollar figure may meet your budget, but in the end, if it doesn't kind of meet the technical requirements, it's the bare minimum, it's probably not, it's not going to work. You're going to have drop off in the event and stuff like that. So I don't know if I answered all the questions that were asked there, but yeah, I think, really the technology is what makes or breaks whether or not it's an immersive experience. And certainly, this is still new to everybody. Doing everything all virtually was new to everybody. I think there's a lot of people that doing things in a hybrid model is still going to be pretty new as well. So really finding out what you're getting is really important. That's something that I think everybody needs to be very aware of. You need to know what you're paying for, what you're going to ultimately get. So, yeah.
Okay. And keeping on that cost thread, because Michelle mentioned it, hotel prices are where they were in 2019, so there's not necessarily deals. Mark, what are you seeing from the ground transportation side with costs?
So one of our big costs, and this was pre-COVID, and this has sort of been an ongoing issue, is vehicle insurance. So fewer players in the market, not only in California, but across the United States. This is a huge ongoing issue. So rates have been going up anywhere from, let's say, 20 to 40%. And when you're running equipment that is sprinters, mini coaches, and motor coaches, that's a big increase. And then over the past year, so we've had an increase, even though there's been no business. So labor's up, wages, hourly, based on whatever state you're in. Workers' comp, unfortunately, has been up. So we're hit by wages, workers' comp, and also fuel. Just in California alone, we're now up to almost, depending on what part of the state you're in, a little over $5 a gallon in premium. So you can expect, when you're going to plan a meeting here, probably in the next 6 months or next year, rates are going to go up. So as Michelle said, don't be surprised, not just about supply and demand, but it's just we're being affected by the rates, the costs, operating costs. So I'd say that's probably going to be probably a big issue with everyone. Just be surprised if you were expecting rates from 2019, they're going to be up there. So.
So that's all good information for planners moving forward, because especially if they're, well, I think a lot of the people that are on this call are corporate, on the corporate side, but knowing that when you're talking to upper management or the stakeholders in a meeting and being able to tell them, hey, we have to adjust the budget because everything is costing a little bit more than it was pre-pandemic. Well, that brings me to the next question. What suggestions or advice do you each have for meeting planners as we look ahead the next 6 to 12 months? And Benson, we'll start with you this time, please.
Sure. So suggestions are really that we're kind of working through with folks is making sure that everything you want to do in the ballroom that you've selected, that it's going to fit. actually, when I'm done here today, I need to go back to, Vectorworks and draw up a different room diagram for a client because they need to fit, a certain amount of people in. It's got to fit with production. And, they also want to maintain some level of safety and keep that in mind for their attendees. I would say, my biggest piece of advice is really in regards to room setup and how that affects us as, your event production company. We're taking really what we're kind of moving towards right now is we're taking a meeting room that would normally, perfectly fit 150 people and saying, okay, we need to fit 150 people and now it's got to be this much bigger because we want people to be spaced out. We want some room for this. And in doing that, we've kind of had to up screen sizes. We've had to implement a little bit more audio support, things like that, because we kind of, as the space gets bigger, coverage changes. Certain speakers don't work. A 7.5 by 11 screen is just not big enough now that you've got your last row, at 80 feet versus 60 feet from that screen. So really engage with us as a production company, and whoever else you're using, just ask them questions about like, hey, setup wise, is this okay? Is this good? Is this going to be too big? Is it going to be too small? Asking some of those questions I think is really important. And then two, early on engaging with the property to talk about internet. Because if you're going to be doing something hybrid, internet is going to be a factor, and finding out what that offering is that they have. Find out what that is ahead of time, because there's still some sticker shock with the price of internet. That's not going away. In fact, to be honest, it's actually at some properties, it's gotten even worse. So just be conscious of those things, maybe, really the setup and, engaging with the property on really what their internet costs are, because those are things that, if you're going to need them, you're going to have to figure out a way to pay for them. So.
Okay, thanks. Michelle, we'll go to you next. What advice or suggestions do you have?
I think it's pretty clear at this point. If you're sourcing for a year out, you're probably already a little behind at this point, because 22 is filling up very quickly. We're seeing demand for 23. So just keep that in mind. I know that that's not possible for everyone or for every meeting, obviously. But if you can throw it out there and make a decision this far out, I would highly, highly recommend that, just so that you get some availability. Staffing is still a challenge, even though things are back full swing. Our sales managers are still not all fully back. So we still have hotels that have one or two people answering all of their leads, and typically they would have at least a team of 6-8 people. So I would say, to give a little grace if and when you can. If you don't need something on a Friday afternoon and you're not going to look at it over the weekend, maybe let us answer you on Monday, just to give the sales managers a little more time to get, all of them are working weekends, nights, et cetera. I'm sure you're seeing it on your end. Again, broaden your search. Think of those second and third tier cities that you may not have thought of before. Louisville is actually a city that is really turning around, and a nice option. If you're looking at an Austin or a Nashville, you may be able to find more availability in Louisville. And it's, a great city. So keep that in mind as well. And again, like I said, flexibility with your dates, your space, any kind of flexibility with your pattern. Throw it out there, and let's kind of see what sticks. Hopefully you've got a global sales representative that can help you manage that on your end and manage all of the responses and the emails so that you're not handling too much. But that's really what I would recommend. If you have an opportunity to book a multi-year property or 3 or 4 programs for the same hotel, throw that out there because that may change availability for them for some of those dates. That may be a little more motivation. And push back. You know, if a hotel turns you down, reach out and push back just to see exactly why they're turning you down. They may have not seen some of the details because they're moving so quickly. And, you know, just use your resources, such as your GSO or your planning company, to push back and try to get you some availability where you've been turned down pretty quickly. So I think that's all the information that I have. The only other thing that I would say is that as far as social distancing, that's up to you. I think that when you look at rooms to space ratio, you're going to have a difficult time finding a hotel that can give you a ton of social distancing that you prefer. Most hotels are going back to the CDC standards now. So keep that in mind. And yeah, I think that's it.
Okay, thanks. So Mark, to you.
So my advice for the next 6 months to a year, especially the next 6 months. So if you have a meeting already in the plans and you have not reached out to either your preferred ground transportation provider or you're going to go out and get some bids, I would do that immediately, because I think Michelle said it, Benson has said it, we all have staffing issues. And I think what's going to happen is you're going to be surprised for maybe your provider or maybe someone you're trying to get a bid on, that if you wait late to actually try to secure transportation, you might have a hard time finding a provider, especially if you have a program that does need, you know, sedan, SUV, sprinters, mini coach, maybe needs staffing either at the airport or on site. Just because we are limited and we're expecting things to change, because a lot of staffing issues and labor is all dealing with unemployment. So hopefully things change, and that's when unemployment stops in many of the states in September. So if you have a program in October, which I can tell you, we have right now at least 4 to 5 programs in October alone, that if we had multiple programs in the same state, we might have an issue where we would have to say no to a client. So you might want to be a little bit proactive and jump out there. And then with these staffing issues, I'm sure you've maybe had contacts, maybe you've had providers that you work with, maybe they have a dedicated team manager or account manager when it comes to, providing service for your programs. There again, a lot of the companies do not have all their staff back. Some, because they've been unemployed for over a year, have left our industry completely. So that's the other issue we have, is trying to bring in some of these people that have been on furlough, and then trying to bring in new people doing training. That's not an easy thing. And with the meeting side, obviously, most of the planners are, consumed with many other things other than ground transportation. And the ones that we work with, and we've worked with Katie in the past, they like to deal with a provider that they give them the program, we have all the details, and then they feel comfortable that they're not having to, micromanage it on a daily basis. And that's what we like to do. We do have the team back. We do have, dedicated either account manager or the team when we do provide the meeting services. And then we're trying to come up with some new technology to make it a little bit easier, whether we're in direct contact with a planner or now we're in direct contact with the actual passengers when they are arriving and departing at the airport. So that's another step that makes it a lot easier, again, for ease of use and just, that confidence that the planner feels great that ground transportation company can provide the service and that I don't have to worry about them. I have too many other things that are high priority, whether it's the hotel or entertainment or speakers, that take, much more of their time than the ground transportation. So I would just look at all those things. It's really, time is of essence because of especially the shortages, and then just knowing that either your preferred or whoever you're going to bid on is actually even going to have availability in that month. But I would say the critical is the next 6 months. So if you have anything on the books, I would start reaching out immediately and start making those contacts and ask all the questions you normally do, and do all of your due diligence.
Okay. I think everyone's taking good notes. Hopefully everyone's taking good notes here. A lot of great information coming out. So the final pre-prepared question that I had for you guys is, what are any final pieces of information, advice, or words of caution? I mean, and we've been talking about that already, but if there's anything that we hadn't touched on or you want to make sure that you mention, and what do you want all the participants and attendees here today to keep in mind as they go on about their day and with their planning and looking into the future? So Michelle, we'll go back and start with you again this time, if that's all right.
Sure. I've probably sounded like a broken record for this whole time, so I'm not going to cover. Oh, and I'm having some major storms, so I apologize if there's some glitches in my internet. But what I would say is, we as hoteliers also know that you guys are going through the same thing. We know that your staff, in most instances, your staff has been cut. You're probably one of very few people doing a lot of the work that was done by several other people. And you've also seen it pick up on your end. So we understand that. We're here for you. We're here to partner with you. And, for moral support. We're here as a therapist if you want to talk. But again, just what I want you to take away is that we're all in this together. We all need to show some grace. The hotels are definitely dealing with staffing issues pretty badly at this point. We're having multiple job fairs. People are being paid to interview at this point in some instances. So I would just say to keep in mind that everyone's doing their best at this point. You still should expect your great service standards, but we're all in it together. So however we can help you out as hoteliers, please just let us know. Let us know exactly what the decision process is, what your expectations are as far as getting things back to you. Any of that information in the RFPs, when you're originally sending it out, as much information as possible is just very helpful, and will eliminate the need for multiple emails from us and to us. So hopefully will save us some time on both ends. But I think, we're going to get through this, and it's exciting to see that everything's coming back. I'm super excited. The programs that I've been at in person, there is a new energy that was not there pre-pandemic. Everyone is super excited to see each other, and where people were burnt out traveling, they're not burnt out anymore. They're actually excited and thrilled to see people in person. So just want to end it on a positive note. I think that things are slowly getting back to normal, and it's really great to see. So that's it.
Yeah, that is great. Thank you. Mark, how do we manage people's expectations?
I'm going to sort of say some of the same things Michelle said. I mean, for us, we're just excited that we have our job and we're seeing the business coming back. And it's refreshing when we do speak to our clients that haven't used us in a year. So to hear those voices, people that we know, I think for all of us, we're realizing that if we're going to be really effective, not only for our own companies, but for our clients, is that we sort of have to change up the way we did business. Meaning we're not going to continually to operate the way we did pre-COVID. So it's sort of like step up the game. We're going to offer of even higher level of service, whatever that might be within our organizations. And hopefully our customers will see some of that, because we are short on labor, that more of that personal touch, more of that personalized service that maybe we all did when we first started in the business. And then when you got big, it sort of changes. But I think it's sort of a nice turnaround to go around and do it again. And some of us had said in our business, I've been doing this 30 years, we all sort of talk about like, do we want to do this all over again? It's not like 2007. It's not like 2008, the financial crisis. This is far worse, but there's still, like Michelle said, and I'm sure Benson will say the same thing, there's still an energy for all of us because we all have a passion for this business. And especially whether it's corporate travel or it's incentive travel or it's the meetings business, we all care about it. So I'm just going to say that would be my comment is there's the excitement's there, the energy's there, and we're looking forward, you know, for things to turn around. Whatever time frame it takes, it doesn't really matter. We're in it, you know, as they say, we're in it to win it. So that's all I got to say.
All right. All right. And Benson.
Yeah, I think, you know, one big thing that we've been pushing, especially on conferences where there's a virtual presenter, is rehearsal time, you know, and that goes for even your in-person presenters too, I think. A lot of people have been presenting to a camera now for 18 months. And I think there's, you know, some cold feet to get out and present to an audience. So don't be afraid if you have the opportunity to offer to your presenters virtually or in person. Don't be afraid to offer them some rehearsal time. I think that's really valuable because some people, again, like I said, they haven't presented to a real audience in maybe 18 months. So, but you know, in regards to that rehearsal, please always make sure you carve out some time to rehearse with any of your virtual presenters that you have. Sometimes ironing out all those kinks with connection issues, who's sharing slides, all that kind of stuff, it's going to go a long way to make sure that when it does come time for that person to present, their stuff is ready to go and everybody knows what's going to kind of be happening when we get to that time in the agenda. So just be aware of that, you know, and yeah, and same thing, you know, Mark and Michelle said it, that you know, our teams are excited to get back. We have quite a few freelancers that we hire that, you know, have taken other jobs just because getting unemployment, being that they were freelancers, you know, 1099, working for a bunch of different people here in Minnesota and around the country, they didn't get a lot of that unemployment. So they had to take other jobs. And a lot of them are still kind of waiting out to see how things are going to come back this fall. And that's fine. I think, you know, they need to do that. That's, you know, decisions they need to make for their family. But yeah, I definitely, our teams are excited. They're ready to get back, and we're ready to, you know, we're ready to take on whatever meeting you can throw at us.
All right. I'm going to put it out to the audience now. What other questions do you all have that maybe was briefly touched on, but you want to dig into it more, that maybe wasn't touched on and you really just want to know? So, you know, as I said, you can either raise your hand and I'll call on you directly, or you can, if you prefer, put it in the chat and we'll ask our panelists here. I'm also, while we're waiting for questions, I'm going to share this with you, the contact information for each of our panelists in case you want to follow up with any of them directly. You can do so. And I'm not seeing any questions. I know there's a little bit of a lag time on the chat side.
Katie, this is Deborah Nurburn. Can I just make a comment?
Sure.
You know, one of the things that I'm just finding that Michelle noted is that I think right now with the limited availability with these, you know, tier 1 destinations, that this might be a really great opportunity for tier 2 destinations like Louisville or Lexington or some of these others, that meeting planners should really tap into some of those CVBs and just, you know, see what they have available. I think the biggest challenge that I've always heard when I'm looking at a tier 2 city is it's the flight, you know, you know, the executives want nonstop, or they want, you know, those direct flights. And a lot of these little bit smaller, you know, destinations, you might have to connect a little bit more, but you know, I think you should just, you know, you hate for that to be the hindrance of you going to a tier 2 destination, but it's one of the things that from my experience, it's always been, well, it's hard to get airlift into some of these places.
Okay, thanks, Deb. Marcella. You had a question?
Hi, thank you.
Yes.
My name is Marcella, and I'm a senior manager of global meeting and events for Baker McKenzie. Hey, Michelle. This was a great session, so thank you very much for putting it together. Quick question for Benson. About a couple months ago, I attended a webinar, and there was a panel of meeting planners there who had been planning meetings in North America. And one of the comments that one of the panelists, meeting planners, said was, in terms of audio visual, that the hotel, and I don't remember the hotel or the state, so I apologize, it may not even be relevant, but she said that they had new individuals in the AV, and it was a sanitation manager, and their job was to sanitize all the microphones and all the equipment. And so the question is that going to stay permanent, do you think? And the second part is, I believe she said that the cost was passed on to the organization. So it wasn't the AV company, it was put on the bill as an extra charge, and ultimately the customer had to pay for it. So can you comment on that, please? Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are doing an event in a couple weeks where we are actually hiring an extra body to take care of exactly what you're talking about. In our industry, we don't call it in our company specifically, we don't call it a sanitation engineer or anything like that. It's just an audio A2. So typically on a larger event, we'll have an A2 to, assist our audio lead in miking up people and making sure all the batteries and the mics are changed. So really what we're doing is we're kind of taking that A2 position, and we're saying, on top of, making sure everything has a battery, making sure executives are mic'd up, all that kind of stuff. Here's the wipes, here's the hand sanitizer, please help us keep a clean environment with these, with these items that are being, high touch. They're being passed around. Clickers too. A lot of times we'll have our, A2s manage the clicker, make sure that the presenter has their clicker for their presentation. So yeah, we're adding and we're definitely asking. That's a question that we ask a lot of our clients is, all right, are you doing Q&A? Are you going to be having someone run around with a microphone, or are we doing mics on sticks in the audience? If so, we want to make sure we have a person that can help keep the cleanliness of all that stuff. As far as, who's responsible for that cost, it is a cost that we are passing on to our end client. It's something that we've made them aware of and said, look, you aren't going to use an app or anything like that for Q&A. Part of it is actually have, members from the audience going up, grabbing a microphone, and they're, measuring on a screen and doing some interaction with the faculty that's going to be on stage and whatnot. So those items, the calipers that they're going to be using, the laser pointer that they're going to be using, the clicker that they're going to be using, the microphone, all that stuff is high touch at that point. So we are having basically an A2 sit in very close proximity to the stage to make sure that when that person comes off, they grab everything from that, presenter that went up on stage, grab everything, wipe it down before the next person comes up to do their case, and so on and so forth. So yeah, ask definitely your production companies, are you going to have an A2 on this job? Are you going to have somebody that's going to kind of help manage and wrangle all that kind of stuff? An A2 usually is a lower cost day rate than an audio A1 is. Obviously, the A1 is typically the system engineer, the person that's designed all the audio framework for the event. So an A2 is a lower tier cost. But yeah, it's something to have a conversation with your production companies about, because if you're not going to use an app for Q&A or something like that, you obviously are going to have some microphones out. You're going to have some things that people are going to be touching or walking around within the room. So just be mindful, be mindful of that. I definitely am backing up what you're saying, and ask for that. If that's something you're concerned about, ask for that.
Okay, thank you. I've been watching chat. I don't see any more questions coming in there. One last check with our live audience. Does anybody else have any comment, question that they want to add before we wrap up? And again, I'll point out, we've got on the screen here, we've got the contact information. As you've all heard, we have been fortunate to have 3 amazing representatives here from each of their industries. So I just want to give a big thanks to all 3 of you, Michelle, Mark, and Benson. Thank you so much for your time today, giving us all some great information, helping us prepare and manage our expectations moving forward for the next 6, 12 plus months. So thank you all very much.
Thank you.
And I also want to thank the team here at LaClare Group. Everybody here is an entire dedicated professional team, and they work magic on every event that we do. And finally, if you'd like to continue this conversation, I've got our contact details here. We're happy to talk with any of you. And if you head over to the website, sign up for our monthly newsletter, we'll keep you posted when we do more of these live events, because I'm fully planning on doing more. I think it's good to learn things, and when we share information together, we all do better. So thanks again, everyone, for being here. Thanks again to our awesome panelists, and I hope you all have a good day. Thanks.